I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Jake, and I'm just a regular guy in my mid-30s, living in a suburban neighborhood in Ohio with my wife, Melissa. We've been married for about 6 years now, and while things were never perfect, I thought we had a solid relationship. I had my job as a graphic designer, and Melissa worked part-time at a boutique. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always managed to make it through. Or so I thought. Lately, though, things felt off. Melissa was distant. She started coming home late more often, saying she was working on a new project at the boutique. It didn't make sense. She never stayed late before. At first, I brushed it off, thinking she was just trying to prove herself at work. But then came the little things that fueled my doubts. She stopped initiating sex, and when we did have it, she seemed distracted, as if her mind was elsewhere. One night, I decided to surprise her with dinner. I cooked her favorite meal, set the mood with candles, and waited for her to come home. When she finally walked through the door, she seemed shocked to see me. "Oh wow, Jake, this looks great," she said, but I could see that spark wasn't there. I asked her how her day went, and she responded with vague comments about her coworkers and the latest sales. Something didn't feel right, but I let it slide. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. The real turning point came when I decided to check our mutual credit card statement. I was just looking for things we might have forgotten about, but then I saw it, a charge at a hotel I knew we'd never stayed at. My heart sank. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my gut was screaming at me. I couldn't ignore it. After a couple of sleepless nights, I decided to follow her one evening. Melissa had said she was going out with some friends, but I had a sinking feeling that this wasn't just a simple girls' night. I waited until she left and then quietly got into my car, keeping a safe distance behind her. She drove to that hotel, the same one from the charge. I parked a block away and watched. As she walked into the building, a smile on her face. I was paralyzed with rage and disbelief. This wasn't happening. I thought about my vows, our life together, and how much I loved her. But now she was betraying everything we built. My heart raced as I grappled with the realization that I was living a lie. The next day I confronted her. I waited until she came home, her usual cheerful demeanor gone. I couldn't hold back. "Melissa, I know about the hotel," I said, my voice trembling. The look on her face was a mix of shock and defiance. She quickly recovered, though, and launched into her defense. "Jake, you're being ridiculous. That's not what it looks like," she shouted, her eyes narrowing. As she rambled on with her excuses, claiming it was just a misunderstanding, I felt an avalanche of emotions engulf me: anger, betrayal, sadness. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was there. I demanded the truth, and her response was a torrent of lies, each more absurd than the last. I could hardly process what she was saying. I felt crushed under the weight of her deception. She swore it was nothing, just a little fling, but it felt like a giant knife twisting in my gut. My mind was racing, and all I could think about was how I'd trusted her, how she had turned our life into this twisted game. It was surreal, and I was caught in a storm of emotions that I had never experienced before. I needed a plan. I couldn't just sit back and let her walk away with this. I had to find a way to make her understand the pain she had caused. It was time for revenge. But how? How could I make her realize what she had done? I didn't want to hurt her, but I needed her to feel the weight of her betrayal. The thought of her planning to elope with another man while I sat at home waiting for her was unbearable. What would I do next? I had to think strategically. I had to play my cards right. The days following my confrontation with Melissa were surreal. I felt as if I was living in a fog, going through the motions of daily life while my heart was heavy with betrayal. I kept replaying our argument in my mind, her words echoing like a haunting melody that I couldn't drown out. I felt angry, sad, and confused all at once. Every time I looked at her, I remembered the lies she had spun. After several sleepless nights, I decided I needed to gather evidence. The hotel wasn't just a one-time slip. It was proof of something larger, a betrayal that she thought she could hide. I started tracking her phone, using an app designed for families to share locations. I wasn't proud of this. It felt invasive, but I needed to know. I needed to understand the depth of her deceit. The next few days were a blur. I watched as Melissa continued her routine, seemingly unaffected by the storm brewing beneath the surface. She laughed a little too loudly at her phone, and I couldn't help but feel sickened every time she mentioned her friends. I knew that friend was more than likely the man she had been cheating with. I could almost picture the two of them together, laughing, sharing intimate moments while I was left in the dark. One evening, I got a notification on my phone. She was at the same hotel again. I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was my chance to confront her again, but this time I needed to have my evidence ready. I decided to go and see for myself. I was nervous, but I had to know. I drove to the hotel and parked a discreet distance away. As I approached the entrance, my heart raced in my chest. I waited for what felt like hours, anxiety twisting my stomach into knots. Finally, I spotted her. She walked into the lobby looking radiant. I felt my fists clench at my sides as I watched her. How could she look so carefree when she was betraying me? I took a deep breath, knowing I had to stay calm and collected. I walked inside, my heart pounding. I slipped into the corner of the lobby and kept my eye on her. She was all smiles, talking to someone just out of my view. I strained to hear snippets of their conversation, and then I caught it. Laughter. My blood boiled as the sound echoed in my ears. I didn't want to believe it, but I was too late. I turned my head, and there he was, Ryan, a guy from her work. The thought of him being the one to take my wife away sent waves of rage through me. I stood there, frozen, watching them. She leaned in closer to him, and he wrapped his arms around her waist. The sight of them together was unbearable. I felt a surge of anger mixed with deep sorrow. They were about to cross a line that I couldn't let them. I had to act. I stepped forward, and the moment I approached, Melissa's smile melted away. When she saw me, surprise flashed across her face, quickly replaced by panic. "Jake, what are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice cracking. I looked at Ryan, who immediately stepped back, looking awkward and guilty. "Why don't you tell me?" I replied, my voice low and menacing. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, and I wasn't going to let her weasel out of this one. "Listen, it's not what it looks like. I was just—" she started, but I cut her off. "Spare me the excuses, Melissa. I saw you both. I know what's going on," I said, my anger flaring. The shock on her face confirmed my deepest suspicions. How could she be so brazen? Ryan stood awkwardly beside her, clearly unsure of what to do. I could see the fear in Melissa's eyes. She knew she had been caught red-handed. "You don't understand, Jake," she began, but I didn't want to hear it. "Save it. You were planning to elope, weren't you? You thought you could sneak around behind my back and I wouldn't find out." I pressed, my voice rising. I was furious, but there was a twinge of heartbreak that I couldn't shake off. "Jake, please, it's not how it seems. I was confused," she pleaded, but I wasn't having it. The lies, the deceit, everything she had put me through, it was all crashing down at once. I turned to Ryan, glaring at him. "You think you're going to just swoop in and take my wife? You have no idea what you're getting into," I spat, my voice dripping with venom. He stammered. "I didn't know. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know you were still together." The cowardly look on his face only fueled my anger further. Melissa's demeanor shifted, and for a moment I saw the woman I loved, the one who had promised me forever. "Jake, please listen to me. I'm sorry, I never meant for it to go this far," she cried, tears streaming down her face. But I was done listening. I didn't want to hear her empty apologies anymore. I felt sickened by everything that had transpired, and I was determined to make her understand the gravity of her actions. I couldn't let this stand. I realized I had to make a choice, a decision that would determine the rest of my life. As I looked at her, I knew that I couldn't let them escape to the altar, not while my heart was still shattered into a million pieces. I had to think of a way to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. It was time to execute my plan for revenge, and I was ready to take action. After that confrontation at the hotel, everything felt different. The air between Melissa and me was thick with unspoken words and simmering tension. I couldn't shake the image of her with Ryan from my mind. I felt like I was wearing blinders, unable to see anything but the vast canyon that now lay between us. The trust I had placed in her was shattered, and I felt an overwhelming need to retaliate, to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. I spent the following days plotting my revenge. I knew I didn't want to hurt her physically or emotionally in a way that would leave permanent scars, but I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions. I wanted to show her that I wouldn't be the fool she thought I was. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that making her feel the pain of her betrayal was the only way to regain some sense of control over my life. I started by getting into Ryan's social media. It didn't take much digging to find him. I discovered he was a fitness influencer with a decent following. He loved flaunting his lifestyle, pictures of him working out, hanging out with friends, and posting inspirational quotes about relationships. I could see how he had charmed Melissa. I could see why he was appealing. He was everything I wasn't, at least in her eyes. I crafted a simple message, one that would grab attention. "Hey Ryan, I'm Jake, Melissa's husband. We need to talk. I know about the two of you." I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the send button. I didn't want to sound desperate or angry. I wanted to sound in control, calculated, but I couldn't help myself. I pressed send, my heart racing as I waited for his response. Within minutes, my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. "What do you want, man?" His response was immediate, and I could sense the tension in his words. I decided to take a calm but assertive approach. "I want to meet up and discuss your relationship with my wife. I think you owe me that much." He agreed. We set a time and place to meet. As I prepared for the encounter, I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was my chance to confront him, to take a stand for myself. I wanted him to understand that he was playing with fire, and I was not going to let him get away with it. When I arrived at the coffee shop, I spotted Ryan sitting at a table. He looked nervous, glancing around as if he expected someone to intervene. I approached him, my heart pounding. "Jake," he said, standing up and extending his hand. I shook it, trying to ignore the way his grip felt too firm, too confident. We sat down, and I wasted no time. "You need to understand that Melissa is married. I trusted her and she betrayed me. You need to step away from her," I said, my voice steady. Ryan leaned back, crossing his arms defensively. "Look, man, I didn't know you were still together." "She told me you guys were separated," he replied, trying to play innocent, but I wasn't buying it. "Don't you dare play that game with me. She might have told you that to keep you interested, but you should have questioned it. If you knew about me, you wouldn't be here," I shot back, my frustration bubbling. "You're just as guilty in this mess as she is." Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I didn't mean for this to happen. We just connected, you know. I liked her and she liked me." I could feel the rage boiling in my blood. "You think it's just that simple? You're ruining a marriage, and you think it's okay because you connected. What about me? What about the vows she made?" He looked away, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't think it would go this far," he muttered, shame creeping onto his face. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. "You need to make a choice. You can either walk away from Melissa right now, or I will make sure everyone knows about this, including your followers. You don't want that kind of drama, do you?" The threat hung in the air. I could see the realization dawning on him, and for a second I relished the feeling of power. Ryan was just a man, someone who thought he could take what was mine without consequences. "You can't do that," he protested weakly, but I could see the fear creeping into his eyes. "Oh, I can and I will. You think your little lifestyle can withstand the fallout. You think your fans will still support you when they find out you're the guy who broke up a marriage." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You need to either end this with Melissa or be prepared for the consequences. Your choice." After several tense moments, Ryan finally nodded, looking defeated. "Fine, I'll talk to her. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." I could feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. "You need to make sure she understands this too," I added, my voice colder than before. I left the coffee shop feeling a mix of vindication and sadness. I had confronted the man who had disrupted my life, and it had felt good to take back some control, but I also felt the weight of what I had to do next. When I got home, Melissa was waiting for me. She looked anxious, clearly sensing that something had changed. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, ready to face her once more. "We will talk, but on my terms," I replied, feeling an unsettling mix of power and pain. I needed to show her that her actions had consequences. I wanted her to feel the panic I had felt when I discovered her betrayal. This was more than revenge. It was about making her understand the weight of her decisions. I had taken a step in my plan, but there was still a long way to go. I was determined to make her feel the repercussions of her choices, and I would do whatever it took to ensure she never forgot what she had done. When I walked through the door, I could see that Melissa was on edge. She had her arms crossed, packing back and forth, her eyes darting around the room as if she were waiting for something to happen. I knew she could sense the change in energy, the tension thick between us. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. "Jake, you've been acting so weird lately. Can we just talk about this?" she asked, her voice tinged with desperation. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. I had to make her understand the gravity of her actions and the choices she had made. "Talk about what, Melissa? About how you've been lying to me? About how you've been cheating on me? Or do you want to talk about how you were planning to elope with Ryan?" I said, my voice steady but laced with anger. I watched as her face fell, a mixture of shock and guilt washing over her. "Jake, she began, but I wasn't interested in her excuses. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, and I wasn't going to let her sidestep this conversation. "No, Melissa, I don't want to hear your excuses. I want you to understand that there are consequences for what you've done." Her eyes widened, and I could see the realization dawning on her. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I mean, I've spoken to Ryan. We had a nice little chat, and I made it clear to him that he needs to step away from you. I told him I would expose him if he didn't." I watched as her expression shifted from shock to anger. "Jake, you can't do that. You don't know what you're talking about," she yelled, her voice rising. "This isn't fair. You're the one who's being controlling." "Controlling? No, Melissa, I'm taking back control of my life. You've betrayed me, and I will not let you walk away from this without understanding the pain you've caused." I fired back. "You thought you could just play with my heart and I'd sit here like a fool? Nope, not anymore." She stared at me, her eyes wide and filled with a mix of fear and defiance. "You're being crazy, Jake. This will ruin everything. You're ruining everything." I stepped closer, leaning in so she could hear the seriousness in my voice. "You're the one who ruined everything, Melissa. You made your choices, and now you need to face them. I'm not going to let you pretend this didn't happen." I could see her struggling to comprehend the weight of my words. She took a step back, her body tense. "What do you want from me? Do you want me to grovel, to beg for your forgiveness?" "No, I want you to truly realize what you've lost. I want you to feel the pain of your choices just like I have. You wanted to elope with Ryan. You need to understand that it's not that easy." As the tension hung in the air, I could see the desperation in her eyes. I had never seen her so vulnerable before, and a part of me felt a twinge of regret. But I quickly pushed that aside. I needed to stay strong. I needed to follow through with my plan. "I want you to think about what you're giving up. Think about the life we built together. You want to throw it all away for someone who didn't even care enough to find out if you were really mine." I continued, my voice more controlled now. Melissa's expression softened for a moment, but then she regained her composure. "Jake, I made a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen like this." "A mistake?" "No, Melissa, this wasn't just a mistake. This was a choice, a conscious choice you made to betray our marriage. You thought you could have both worlds without consequences." Her silence was deafening. It was clear that my words were sinking in. "I don't want to lose you, Jake. I love you," she finally said, her voice breaking. I could see her fighting with the emotions, struggling to reconcile what she had done with what she still wanted. But was that love genuine, or was it just fear of losing me? "Love. You betrayed me with someone else. You can't just say that and expect me to believe you," I replied coldly. "You need to decide what you really want, because if you choose him, there's no going back." She sat down on the edge of the couch, her hands trembling. The weight of the situation was finally pressing down on her. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Then think about it. I'll give you time. But while you're doing that, don't think for a second that I'm just going to stand by and let you walk away unscathed. I'll make sure Ryan knows exactly what he's getting into if you choose him." I turned to leave the room, needing a moment to collect my thoughts. I felt a mix of triumph and heartbreak. I had taken a stand, but the reality of what was happening between us was crushing. As I walked outside, I felt a wave of determination wash over me. I had taken control of my life again, but I was also acutely aware that this was just the beginning. I would see this through, and I hoped in the end that Melissa would realize what she had lost and make the right decision. But deep down, I feared that I might have already lost her. Perhaps she had already made her choice, and I was just too blind to see it. The uncertainty loomed over me as I prepared for the next phase of my plan. I needed to brace myself for whatever was to come, knowing that the road ahead would be fraught with pain and difficult decisions. I was ready to fight for my marriage, but I was also prepared for the possibility that it might slip through my fingers for good. The days that followed were a blur of tension and uncertainty. Melissa and I lived under the same roof but felt like strangers. She spent her time locked away in our bedroom, crying, while I tried to keep my distance, figuring out my next move. I had taken a stand, but I knew that the battle was far from over. The confrontation with Ryan had been just the beginning, and I was determined to make sure that everyone involved understood the consequences of their actions. I reached out to Ryan again, sending him a message to meet up. I wanted to make sure he was aware of the precarious position he was in. We need to talk again. Meet me at the same coffee shop. I'll be waiting. This time I didn't want to sound angry. I wanted to show him that I was in control of the situation. He responded quickly, agreeing to meet, and I felt a sense of satisfaction. When I arrived that afternoon, I could see Ryan was already there, sitting at the same table, looking nervously at his phone. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins as I approached him. He looked up, his expression a mix of fear and guilt. "Jake," he said, standing as I approached. "Let's cut to the chase, Ryan. Have you talked to Melissa?" I asked, my voice steady but firm. I could see the tension radiating from him, and I knew I had him exactly where I wanted him. "Yeah, I did. She's really upset, man. She didn't know what she wanted," he replied, his voice faltering. I leaned in, lowering my tone to make sure he understood the weight of the situation. "Listen to me. You need to recognize what you're doing. You're toying with both of our lives. If you don't want this to blow up in your face, you need to step away from her completely." He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "But I care about her. We have a connection, you know. It's not that simple," he protested, but I wasn't interested in his feelings. "It doesn't matter how you feel. You're a distraction for her. You've become a reason for her to escape from the reality she created. Do you really want to be that guy, the one who destroys a marriage for some temporary fling?" Ryan looked down at his hands, clearly wrestling with the weight of my words. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought we were just having fun," he mumbled, his guilt palpable. "Fun? You think this is fun for me? My whole life has been turned upside down because of you two. You need to make a decision today. Either you walk away or I'll make sure everyone knows about this little affair, and trust me, I won't hold back." He met my gaze, his eyes filled with fear. Okay, I'll talk to her. I'll end things," he finally said, and there was a sense of relief mixed with victory flooding through me. "Good, because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone in your life knows what kind of person you are. Don't forget that," I warned, standing up to leave. As I walked away from the coffee shop, I felt a sense of empowerment. I had taken control of the situation, but I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of uncertainty. I had forced Ryan to back off, but would it be enough to bring Melissa back to me? When I returned home, I found Melissa sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. She looked up at me, and for a moment we shared a silence heavy with unspoken words. "Have you seen him?" she asked quietly, her voice shaky. "Yes, I did," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "He knows that he needs to back off. I made sure he understands the consequences of continuing this." Melissa's eyes widened with a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You actually confronted him?" "Of course I did." "You think I'd just let him walk away unscathed while he's been ruining our life? I won't allow that," I said, my voice steady. She looked down, clearly grappling with her emotions. "Jake, I don't know what to say. I messed up. I was confused and I let things go too far." "Confused? You don't get to play that card, Melissa. You made choices and now you have to face them. You need to decide what you truly want. Do you want me or do you want him?" Her expression shifted from shame to anger. "You can't force me to decide, Jake. I need time. This is all so overwhelming." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You're right. You do need time. But understand this. I won't stick around for you to figure things out with him. You need to think long and hard about the consequences of your actions and what you truly want in your life." The silence hung heavily between us. I could see the conflict in her eyes, a battle between guilt and desire. I wanted to believe that she would come to her senses and realize she didn't want Ryan. but a part of me feared that she might choose him, that she might be too wrapped up in the excitement of the affair to see the pain it was causing. Days turned into weeks and the emotional roller coaster continued. I watched as Melissa grappled with her feelings, and I could see her slowly coming to terms with the reality of her actions. She would have moments where she would break down and apologize, expressing her regrets, but then there were times when she would pull away again, lost in her thoughts. I was torn. I wanted to believe that our love was worth fighting for, but I also couldn't ignore the betrayal that had shattered my trust in her. My heart was conflicted, and I knew I had to be careful with my next steps. I needed to give her the space to make a decision, but I also needed to protect myself from being hurt again. Finally, one evening, after a particularly tense day, Melissa approached me. She looked different, determined but scared. "Jake, I've been thinking a lot about everything," she began, her voice steady. "I know I messed up badly and I need to take responsibility for my actions." I held my breath, waiting for her to continue. "I've decided that I want to work on our marriage. I don't want to lose you, and I realize now that this was a mistake," she said, her voice trembling as she spoke. Relief washed over me, but I remained cautious. "Are you sure about this, Melissa? I need to know you're not just saying it because it's easier than facing the truth." "I've thought about it long and hard. I love you, Jake. I was just caught up in something that felt exciting and new, but I see now that it was all a lie." "I want to fight for us," she replied, her eyes pleading for me to believe her. As I looked into her eyes, I felt a glimmer of hope, but I also knew that rebuilding our marriage would take time and effort, and it wouldn't come without its challenges. I had to be willing to forgive, but I also needed to ensure that I wouldn't be blindsided again. "Okay, Melissa, if we're going to do this, we need to take it slow. Trust is something that takes time to rebuild," I said, my voice firm but gentle. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand, I'll do whatever it takes." As we stood there, facing each other, I felt a shift in our relationship. It was unclear what the future held, but I was willing to try. I would protect my heart, but I would also give her a chance to prove that she could earn back my trust. In that moment, I knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey. It would be painful and challenging, but if we both committed to working through this, perhaps we could find our way back to each other. I had fought for my marriage, and now it was time to see if she would fight for it too. The path ahead was unknown, but I was ready to take that first step into the future, no matter how rocky it might be. As we embarked on this new chapter of our relationship, I was filled with a mix of hope and apprehension. Melissa and I both knew that rebuilding our marriage wouldn't happen overnight. Trust, once shattered, takes time to mend. But we were both committed to making things work, albeit cautiously. The first few weeks after her confession were a roller coaster of emotions. There were moments of clarity where we would laugh and share stories, reminding ourselves of the love that had brought us together in the first place. Yet there were also dark moments filled with doubt and the specter of betrayal lurking in the background. I found myself frequently checking my phone, nervously waiting for the next message from Ryan, but I had made the decision to cut him out of our lives completely. Melissa was diligent about her commitment to change. She took it upon herself to be more transparent, sharing her phone with me and openly discussing her whereabouts. I could see how hard it was for her to rebuild my trust, and I appreciated her efforts. Yet, even with this newfound openness, I couldn't help but feel the weight of our past hanging over us. One evening, we decided to sit down and talk about what had happened. "Jake, I want to make sure we're on the same page," Melissa said, her voice serious. "I know I hurt you deeply and I need to make amends. I want to know how you're feeling about everything." I looked at her, feeling the heaviness in my heart. "It's hard. Melissa, I want to forgive you and I want to believe that we can move forward, but the pain is still fresh. I don't want to feel like this forever." "I understand. I feel terrible about what I've done. I don't want to lose you and I'm willing to do anything to make it right," she replied, her eyes filled with sincerity. We spent hours talking, opening up about our feelings, my hurt, her confusion, and the love that still lingered beneath the surface. It was a cathartic experience, and I could feel our connection slowly being rebuilt, brick by brick. We even began to explore couples therapy, believing that an outside perspective could help us navigate the rocky waters of our relationship. As weeks turned into months, we continued our journey of healing. I noticed a change in Melissa. She was more attentive, more present. It felt like she had truly recognized the depth of her actions and was determined to make things right. However, the journey wasn't linear. There were setbacks, nights where we would lie in bed, silence engulfing us, memories of betrayal creeping in like an unwelcome visitor. During those moments, I often questioned if I was making the right choice. Was I being foolish for thinking we could overcome this? But then I'd look at Melissa, her eyes reflecting a mix of regret and determination, and I would remind myself of the love that had been there before the storm. One evening, as we were watching a movie together on the couch, she turned to me and said, "Jake, I've been thinking a lot about our relationship and how far we've come. I know it's still fragile, but I really appreciate your willingness to work through this with me." I smiled, feeling a warmth spreading through me. "I appreciate you too, Melissa. I know it's not easy for you. I want us to succeed, but we both have to commit to being honest with each other." She nodded, her expression sincere. "I promise I will. I don't want to lose you again. You mean too much to me." In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. We had a long road ahead, but we were taking it one step at a time. I realized that forgiveness was a process, not a destination. It was about understanding, communication, and rebuilding trust. As spring turned into summer, I began to see a future for us. It was still tentative, but I was willing to take that leap of faith. I had learned that love is not just a feeling. It's a choice that requires effort, understanding, and vulnerability. I wanted to share this journey not only for my own healing, but to hopefully inspire others who might find themselves in similar situations. Life can throw unexpected challenges our way, and sometimes we find ourselves lost in the chaos of betrayal and hurt. But if both partners are willing to fight for healing, they can emerge stronger than before. As we sat together, looking out at the sunset, I held Melissa's hand tightly, feeling a sense of renewed hope. We were starting to rediscover each other, and while the road ahead would have its challenges, I knew we were no longer just a couple fighting against the storm, but partners willing to weather it together. Together, we were building a new foundation, one rooted in honesty, communication, and a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to love. And while the future was uncertain, we were ready to face it as a team, learning from our past and embracing whatever came next.